Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Fay Khudairi. I'm going to be sharing a little bit about how we can reduce waste and live sustainably during Ramadan. Thank you all so much for joining me. Last week, we had another workshop that was on the same topic, and we talked about SMART goals and things that we can do to reduce waste. And this week, we're going to be continuing on the topic, specifically talking about the life cycle and composting during Ramadan. Thank you again, everyone. I just want us to set the intention that this workshop be one that is beneficial to you, something that you can use in your life, and something that inshallah brings you closer to Allah in a practical way. So that way we're actually taking steps in our everyday life that can be impactful, inshallah. So Allah says, and among his signs in this, that you see the earth barren. But when we send down water, rain to it, it is stirred to life and growth of vegetation. Verily, he who gives it life, surely he is able to give life to the dead on the day of resurrection. Indeed, he is able to do all things. That's from Surah Al-Fusilat, verse 39. So there's this concept of death and rebirth that Allah tells us about in the Quran, and we can use the natural world as a representation of that, as signs, as ayats of the death and rebirth cycle. Everything that Allah has created will die one day. For humans and for all of creation, they will be brought to Him on the day of resurrection. And Allah shows us an example of this, how he brings what was once dead to life through the cycle of composting, which we're going to talk about more during this workshop, which shows how things break down into their essence. What was once alive breaks down into the earth and regrows into new plants, and the cycle continues. So we're just going to go on a little nature walk. Oops. You're going to have to excuse my technology here. Okay. Here we go.
Assalamu alaikum. We're going to go for a nature walk this evening. I wanted to point us toward the beautiful ferns that are now growing. You can see their little heads poking up. They're coming out of what was once dead earth, what was frozen, hard earth, dry. You can see all these dry leaves from last fall that have fallen, have broken down and now become the fertilizer for these beautiful ferns that are now growing. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rebirths the earth. And just as he's able to rebirth the earth with these beautiful ferns and wildlife and flowers, we too will return to him, rebirthed. Yawm al-Akhirah. So the springtime is a wonderful time of rebirth to observe and learn from Allah's signs. The earth is a sign for us. It's also our imana, our trust. How we treat this earth, how we take care of it, whether we pollute and waste, and sometimes unknowingly just through our trash and how that then ends up in landfills and in the ocean. Unknowingly, we can contribute to the destruction of Allah's trust that he's given us, and that will account for us on the day of judgment. So it's up to us how we're going to treat the earth, and we can make changes. We can live sustainably and do everyday actions that will help protect this earth. That can be through composting, so taking the signs that Allah has shown us in the natural decomposition cycle, which happens when moisture and sun heat up dead natural materials such as the leaves, then break them down into soil that then can be a medium for new plants, such as this broken down log. You can see how it's already turning into dirt. Here it's become dirt. And this is just a broken down log that with time, moisture, and Allah's hand breaks down into what will now be the forest bed for new growth. SubhanAllah, there are many signs for us.
Thank you for taking a walk with me. Now we're going to go on to talk about how this can actually happen, the decomposition cycle, how we can see that happen in our everyday life, whether through going on a walk or how you can bring that into your home. Nature is in balance, subhanAllah. Allah has made everything in perfect balance. Mizan is the concept in Islam. Mizan, everything is in balance. The test that humans have is what we do with this amana that I talked about, this trust that we have. How do we take care of it, or how do we use Allah's gifts in ways that He asks us not to do by spreading corruption and imbalance? This can all be done through wastefulness. Unfortunately, there's a lot of waste in this planet. I don't need to tell you that. Everyone has walked down the road and you can see trash and litter on the side of the road. And there, maybe you're not someone who throws trash on the side of the road, but maybe the trash that you put in the waste bin ends up in a river or ocean. And what do you have to do with that, right? That's no longer in your hands. But if we can minimize the waste that goes to the trash in the first place, perhaps we can lessen our impact, our negative impact on the environment. Allah says in Surah Al-Araf, verse 31, and waste not by excess, for Allah loves not the wasters. Allah explicitly tells us not to be wasteful. And there's a reason for that. We can see that every year consumers in rich countries such as the United States waste almost as much food, 222 million tons, as the entire food production in sub-Saharan Africa. SubhanAllah. In the US, 1,500 plastic water bottles are used every second. So there's a lot of one-use items that end up in the oceans, and you can see, unfortunately, the ones that pay the price are Allah's creation, the animals. And then later, we see that humans are also affected by this. There are a lot of countries where there's waste that washes up on their beaches and on their shorelines. And there are a lot of health consequences that come from this, both for animals, plants, and as well as humans. Fortunately, we can make a difference. You can make a difference. This may seem like an overwhelming problem that the earth is suffering with. This may seem like I'm just one person. How can I make a difference? But if every person makes one change during this Ramadan to reduce their impact, their negative impact on the environment, it can be a lasting change. Inshallah, the habits that we're creating during Ramadan will extend beyond that, and we can at least see that making these changes don't have to be that difficult. It can be one thing that you change that will then carry on and also serve as an example to our friends and family. So one of the solutions is to reduce. Last week, we talked a lot about ways to reduce, and you all shared wonderful examples on the chat. And I encourage you to continue to share on this chat so people can see what are the ways that you're working on reducing your waste during Ramadan. We talked about minimizing non-essential purchases during Ramadan, such as making sure that you have a list before you go to the grocery store, only consuming what you need. So that will help reducing with food waste. And then also there are many wonderful programs that Boston is setting up, the Muslim Community Network has. So that way, if you do have excess food, you can share it with people and drop it off to people who may need an extra meal. So sharing resources, and that can look in all different ways. That can be with food, but then also when we're thinking about the next solution, which is reuse, we can buy secondhand, we can share items, we can look for ways that we can get something for maybe a friend that they don't need a couch and I need a couch, and creating those networks so that way we're exchanging and helping one another, and we don't have to be buying new every time, which is wasting a lot of resources, as I'm sure you all know. Some of the most harmful things are plastic, and so repurposing plastic bags and containers, just reusing them so it's not just a single-use item, but reuse. I know my mom we would reuse the bread bags. So sliced bread comes in a plastic package, and then that would be my lunchbox the next day after we use them. So she would always save the bread bags. And that's just one thing. Again, it can be something simple, but that means one less bread bag going into a landfill or one less bread bag going into the ocean. Also, you can reuse containers. My grandmother, Sajida Khudairi, she always would reuse yogurt containers, and she would put all sorts of margas and dolma and delicious food in that and then freeze it. So I'm sure these are many things that you already do. So just boosting those, encouraging you to continue to do those practices. There are a lot of things that you're already doing that is wonderful and helpful for the environment. So it's just building on those practices that you already do, and maybe introducing things that you don't know, such as composting and recycling. So I wanted to talk a little bit about composting, which, as I showed in the video, is the breakdown of organic material into dirt. So as I showed, the natural world is already doing that. Now, how do we adopt that into our own practices so that we can mirror and live in harmony with the planet? And so we're going to talk about how that happens in nature, how we can do it at home, and why this even matters. So 1/4 of all waste in Massachusetts is food waste. And we know from the practices of the Prophet ﷺ that you wouldn't even want a piece of food to fall on the ground. There's barakah in every single grain of food, and that the Prophet would eat every single grain from his plate. And that is part of the sunnah and the practices of the Prophet ﷺ, and what we hope to do as well and emulate. Unfortunately, there's a lot of waste that ends up in the garbage that isn't food that we can eat. Perhaps it's a banana peel, you're not going to eat that, but it still is considered food waste and ends up in the garbage. So there are different things that you can do, such as composting. So as I said, compost breaks down the organic materials, such as coffee grounds, food items, paper, napkins, and you can put them in bins such as this one. And I'm going to continue to talk about different ways that you can do. This one's a little bit of a more expensive option, and there are much cheaper ways that you can compost. You do a combination of organic material that is wet, such as green materials, such as grass clippings and food, and then also combine that with 3 parts of brown material, which is carbon-rich material. So that can be leaves, paper bags, coffee filters. So brown items, 3 parts, and then a wet green item, which is nitrogen heavy, 1 part, 3-to-1 ratio. You put that in a compost bin. This one is a tumbler one, so it mixes it. In 2 to 3 months, you have soil, which is incredible. You're literally turning garbage, and it turns into beautiful, rich, nutrient-rich soil that you can use in your garden, or give to another garden. If you yourself don't have one, you can put it in pots and then put a plant in it, and there you go. You can, I saw a video of a woman who had the end of her lettuce. She had cut up a lettuce head. Maybe you've seen this video, it's going around. She cut up a head of lettuce, and she just had the end. Most people throw that away. She put it in water, and it's starting to grow, subhanAllah, just by water and sunlight. Then you can plant that in some soil, And there you have a new lettuce head. And it's incredible how you can take waste and then make more food with it. You can plant seeds that you can buy very cheaply from the store, put it with this soil, and then have some herbs in the home, and you don't have to go to the grocery store. And that whole process, you can just minimize your purchasing. So there's lots of ways that you can compost. This bin, you can also make your own, which is the one on the left. It's very clever, someone took a garbage bin and then drilled holes. So the important thing is just that the waste gets oxygen. There's just a couple things that you need to consider when you're doing it, so that way it's effective. You don't want it to get too wet and then it becomes smelly, which is often a concern that people have, but it actually ends up being less smelly than if it's just sitting in a plastic bag in your kitchen. So it can be an effective way to reduce smell, actually. This can either be outside or in your home. You can have these bins in the basement, for example, and this person drilled a bunch of holes, and as long as you have the right ratio of carbon-rich materials, remember 3:1, to nitrogen-rich materials, which are wet products, food scraps. Think about like when you're peeling a carrot and all of that waste that ends up in the garbage. That can then go into a bin a little bucket that you put in your kitchen, and then into a larger barrel that you keep in the basement or outside. And within 3 months, it will break down with heat and with oxygen, and with this right ratio. You can also get the one that's on the right, which that one is actually purchased, and it has a door at the bottom. So that way you put the new materials on top, and at the bottom it compresses down into then soil that you can use, and you can just lift up the lid and take your soil and put it back down, and then keep filling it up. This one is a barrel that I found outside that I am very interested in drilling holes in. If anyone knows how I can drill holes into it, please let me know. And of course, you need a lid, and I want to create my own compost. Before I get to that, there are ways that you can create your own compost very simply through wood, if you're super handy with wood, or you can use chicken wire, and you can do that outside. And Boston.gov has tons of resources on how you can make your own composting. It's way simpler than you think. It just takes a couple items, and it's really a great activity that you can do with the whole family, and you can watch your food break down into soil, and it's really a miraculous thing to witness. I really encourage you to bring your whole family involved in a project like this, or your friends, especially involving children in something like this can be a really fun hands-on activity, and it has so many signs for us. And then you can also do compost without the bin. So if you're not concerned about, some people are concerned about pests, so that's why the containers are really good. But you can really just do a 3-foot by 3-foot piece of land if you have that, and you can just make a pile and you can see the shovel and just turn it. And that can be a really good option as well, making sure that you have the ratio of 3 carbon to 1 nitrogen, 3 brown to 1 green, making sure that you have enough leaves in there so it's not becoming too wet and stinky. And then this is great if you have outdoor space. If you have indoor space, like I said, Boston.gov has tons of resources of how you can do your own indoor composting. It can be really small. You can say, I just want to see if it works, and have your own little experiment going on until you can figure out how to do it on a larger scale in a practical way for your items. There's also vermicompost, which you can get worms, and that actually mimics the same process, and it's the smell is much less. People often ask if they can put meat and oils, and that's actually something that won't break down well and something that will stink up the area. So really just plants, vegetables, and you can see in this picture, there's some greens in there. There's banana peels, egg shells, looks like an old pumpkin was thrown in there as well. So there's a lot of items, and you'll realize that the trash in your kitchen goes down significantly. That means less pickups, less expensive pickups for both the trash companies and for yourself if you pay by the pickup. And so it can really be a great way to divert trash. Divert trash is a concept that we're going to continue to talk about as we go into recycling. There are also pickup companies this is what I did for a while. I used Bootstrap Compost. They every week they put out a new clean bin, and you just swap it out and just dump your food waste, and it's incredible how much ends up going into what will now become soil rather than the trash. There's also black earth compost. You'll just have to see where they service. There's also drop-off. So if you don't want to do a pickup service, if that's not within your budget, there's also drop-offs around the city where you can bring your compost. So you can just collect it and weekly drop it off. There's 5 different sites in Boston and a lot of other cities. For example, in Brookline, where I was living for a while, they have their own drop-off as well. You can just go up on the city website and find that out. Most cities do leaf and yard waste collection pickup as well. And so that's a really good way that you're making sure that your leaf and yard waste is gonna get repurposed and decomposed properly rather than going into a landfill. What ends up happening and why composting is so important, other than being able to witness how incredible the process is and as a sign for us, but because when we put, for example, an apple core into the trash that then goes into a landfill, it's just going to sit there. It can't break down when it's not exposed to oxygen, as we talked about. It's necessary that it's exposed to oxygen. If it's just sitting in a landfill, it's going to sit there. It's not going to break down the way that it would naturally if you just threw it in the woods, for example, which I don't recommend that you do, but as an example, it would just break down normally. There are other companies that if, for example, you run a kitchen or you have a larger establishment or company that you run, you can, or even in your office, you can use Save That Stuff, or Sero is another company, and they can do larger pickups. And I really recommend that if you work for a company where you notice there's a lot of food waste, you bring that up with your boss and see if they're interested in doing something like composting there. As I said, boston.gov has tons of information and resources well laid out and clear with pictures and everything on how you can do composting and the resources available. So we're going to transition. As I talked about, if an apple core, for example, is just sitting in a landfill, it's not going to break down. And especially if it's something that can't break down to begin with. So plastic is a common item that does not break down. So like in our lives, there's items that we can divert to composting. There are items that are very cheaply produced and are very lightweight and easy to transport, but unfortunately can't break down at all and are now becoming a huge hazard in the environment and are actually affecting humans as well. So a solution to this is recycling. So many of you have already heard about recycling. I know composting is a little bit less familiar of a topic, but recycling is something that many of you already see. In public spaces, you'll see trash and recycling right next to each other. Usually it's like in a blue bin or in a green bin, and I'll say all different items that you can recycle, such as plastic water bottle and aluminum and glass and newspapers. And recycling, the recycling process, it takes all the materials, converts them into raw materials, and then they can become something new. So we're gonna watch this short video about the life cycle of a plastic bottle.
This is the story of 3 plastic bottles, empty and discarded. Their journeys are about to diverge with outcomes that impact nothing less than the fate of the planet. But they weren't always this way. To understand where these bottles end up, we must first explore their origins. The heroes of our story were conceived in this oil refinery. The plastic in their bodies was formed by chemically bonding oil and gas molecules together to make monomers. In turn, these monomers were bonded into long polymer chains to make plastic in the form of millions of pellets. Those were melted at manufacturing plants and reformed in molds to create the resilient material that makes up the triplets' bodies. Machines filled the bottles with sweet, bubbly liquid, and they were then wrapped, shipped, bought, opened, consumed, and unceremoniously discarded. And now here they lie, poised at the edge of the unknown. Bottle 1, like hundreds of millions of tons of his plastic brethren, ends up in a landfill. This huge dump expands each day as more trash comes in and continues to take up space. As plastics sit there being compressed amongst layers of other junk, rainwater flows through the waste and absorbs the water-soluble compounds it contains. And some of those are highly toxic. Together, they create a harmful stew called leachate, which can move into groundwater, soil, and streams, poisoning ecosystems and harming wildlife. It can take bottle 1 an agonizing 1,000 years to decompose. Bottle 2's journey is stranger, but unfortunately no happier. He floats on a trickle that reaches a stream that flows into a river, and a river that reaches the ocean. After months lost at sea, he's slowly drawn into a massive vortex where trash accumulates, a place known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Here, the ocean's currents have trapped millions of pieces of plastic debris. This is one of 5 plastic-filled gyres in the world's seas, places where the pollutants turn the water into a cloudy plastic soup. Some animals, like seabirds, get entangled in the mess. They and others mistake the brightly colored plastic bits for food. Plastic makes them feel full when they're not, so they starve to death and pass the toxins from the plastic up the food chain. For example, it's eaten by lanternfish. The lanternfish are eaten by squid. The squid are eaten by tuna. And the tuna are eaten by us. And most plastics don't biodegrade, which means they're destined to break down into smaller and smaller pieces called microplastics, which might rotate in the sea eternally. But Bottle 3 is spared the cruel purgatories of his brothers. A truck brings him to a plant where he and his companions are squeezed flat and compressed into a block. Okay, this sounds pretty bad too, but hang in there, it gets better. The blocks are shredded into tiny pieces, which are washed and melted so they become the raw materials that can be used again. As if by magic, Bottle 3 is now ready to be reborn as something completely new. For this bit of plastic with such humble origins, suddenly, the sky is the limit.
Awesome. So as the video talked about, there are islands of garbage in the oceans right now, which is shocking when I first found that out. Plastics make up 99.9% of all waste near the islands of trash in the Pacific Ocean. 8 million tons of it enter the oceans each year. And 1/3 of plastic is made for single use, most of it being discarded within a year of manufacture, such as, for example, the plastic water bottle that they showed in the video. These are pretty upsetting scenes, but this is what's happening in the planet, just to illustrate kind of the severity of the impact. These are everyday use single items that end up in these islands. So you can see plastic water bottles, plastic forks, plastic, and styrofoam as well. Those don't break down. So using reusable containers. If you're going to use plastic, like use a plastic Tupperware container that you can keep on reusing, or glass, something that is a little bit sturdier and thicker and you can actually recycle. Styrofoam really just breaks down into lots of little bitty pieces and ends up in the oceans, as they mentioned, and it can't really be broken down into anything more useful. So there are ways that you can recycle, and we'll talk about that. In Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in verse 60, "And do not commit abuse on the earth, spreading corruption." This photo is one that I just took right here in our yard. You can see that all the leaves around the area are breaking down just from a couple months ago, and that plastic water bottle looks like it was thrown there yesterday, and I bet has been sitting there for a while. So like I mentioned, there are lots of places that you can already see recycling bins in public spaces. You can also recycle in your home just by contacting your city. What you can recycle: cardboard, paper, food boxes, as long as it's not like wet and sopping like with pizza boxes, mail, beverage cans, food cans, glass bottles, jars, jugs, plastic bottles, and caps. With the small water bottles, just crush them and cap them. Make sure there's no water in there. That way it uses less space and the boxes aren't transporting air. So crushing them nice and small. You can also recycle plastic bags, electronics, and textiles, but you're going to need to find out where you can do that locally. You can find that out by earth911.com or recyclenation.com, and you put in your zip code and they show you where you can literally recycle anything within a close distance. SubhanAllah, there's a hawk outside that I'm looking at, so that's why I'm smiling. And then the fifth solution is to pray. Prayer really keeps these concepts in the forefront of our mind, points us and brings us closer to our goals. And this is only possible with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is in control of everything. And whether the outcome of the earth is not in our hands, ultimately, yes, there are things that we can do to make an impact. Ultimately, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will decide what becomes of the planet, but we will be accountable for how we treated it. So we pray for ourselves, first and foremost. We pray for our friends and family, for the ummah entirely. We also pray for other creations that Allah has made, such as the hawk that I saw. We pray for the plants and the animals, for their safety and health. And so I just want us to take a moment to reflect on, again, what is one thing that you can do, because these changes aren't going to happen overnight. These concepts are big concepts. These are big problems that we're facing as a nation, as a species, rather, and as a planet. And so there's just one thing that you can do. Perhaps it will make an impact. It's really more than not doing anything, of course. And maybe that one thing will be what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes weigh heavy for us on the Day of Judgment. Whether that's picking up trash, subhanAllah, there's someone that is part of the green team. I don't want to call him out in case he doesn't know that I'm saying this, but when he's walking around, he'll put a piece of trash in his pocket, litter that he sees on the ground, put it in his pocket so that way he can go and dispose of it properly. And just cleaning up the earth, because the earth is our home, the earth is our masjid, and it's in perfect balance. So we can make positive change by reducing consumption. So reducing is really the biggest thing, not consuming in the first place. When we do, we can reuse the materials, like we talked about, using like the plastic bags and reusing them multiple times, or getting Tupperware that you can reuse. Recycling, so making use of recycle pickup and learning about how you can recycle. Composting, whether you do a pickup for composting or you make a project with your family at home and learn how to compost either outside or indoors, and also praying for the planet, of course. So thank you all so much for your time. I encourage you to become part of the ISBCC Green Team. You can volunteer, or if you have any feedback or questions, I really encourage you to email us isbccgreenteam@gmail.com. If you have any ideas or ways that you want to give back, I really encourage you to reach out. There's so much that we can do there's a lot of good that we can do on this planet, and I hope that Allah brings us all together so that we can do good work that will weigh heavy, as I said, for us on the Day of Judgment. Thank you all again for your time. Jazakumullah khair. I want to close by just making us a dua together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim. You are the just, the wisest, the one who is in control of all of us. You are the creator, the sustainer. You give life and you also take away life, and you bring us back to life again. Make us ones that you are people that you are pleased with, guide us towards what is good, guide us towards being useful to the planet, being useful to our fellow creation, and make what is detestable for you, what you do not like, ugly for us, that we stay far away from it, and that we are not those that are part of the problem of spreading corruption on the earth, but that we can be a benefit and khulafa for this planet. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Thank you all. You can join us again next week, same time, 6:30 on Saturday. May you all have blessed Ramadan, blessed iftar tonight. Jazakumullah khair.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويستنبئونك أحق هو قل إي وربي إنه لحق وما أنتم بمعجزين. ولو أن لكل نفس ظلمت ما في الأرض لافتدت به وأسروا الندامة لما رأوا العذاب وقضي بينهم بالقسط وهم لا يظلمون. ألا لله ما في السماوات والأرض ألا إن وعد الله حق. ألا إن لله ما في السماوات والأرض ألا إن وعد الله حق ولكن أكثرهم لا يعلمون. هو يحيي ويميت هو يحيي ويميت وإليه ترجعون. يا من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويستنبئونك أحق هو قل إي وربي إنه لحق وما أنتم بمعجزين ولو أن لكل نفس ظلمت ما في الأرض لافتدت به وأسروا الندامة لما رأوا العذاب ولو أن لكل نفس ظلمت ما في الأرض لافتدت به وأسروا الندامة لما رأوا العذاب وقضي بينهم بالقسط وهم لا يظلمون ألا إن لله ما في السماوات والأرض ألا إن وعد الله حق ولكن أكثرهم لا يعلمون هو يحيي ويميت وإليه ترجعون يا أيها الناس يا أيها الناس قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين. يا أيها الناس قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين. قل بفضل الله وبرحمته فبذلك فليفرحوا هو خير مما يجمعون. قل أرأيتم ما أنزل الله لكم من رزق فجعلتم منه حراما وحلالا قل الله أذن لكم قل الله أذن لكم أم على الله تفترون. قل الله أذن لكم أم على الله تفترون. وما ظن الذين يفترون على الله الكذب يوم القيامة إن الله لذو فضل إن الله لذو فضل على الناس ولكن أكثرهم لا يشكرون. وما تكون في شأن وما تتلو منه من قرآن ولا تعملون من عمل إلا كنا عليكم شهودا. وما تكون في شأن وما تتلو منه من قرآن ولا تعملون من عمل إلا كنا عليكم شهودا إذ تفيضون فيه. وما يعزب عن ربك من مثقال ذرة في الأرض ولا في السماء ولا أصغر من ذلك وما يعزب عن ربك من مثقال ذرة في الأرض ولا في السماء ولا أصغر من ذلك ولا أصغر من ذلك ولا أكبر إلا في كتاب مبين. ألا إن أولياء الله لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. ألا إن أولياء الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة الذين آمنوا وكانوا يتقون لهم البشرى في الحياة الدنيا وفي الآخرة لا تبديل لكلمات الله ذلك هو الفوز العظيم ولا يحزنك قولهم إن العزة لله جميعا هو السميع العليم صدق الله العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور تبارك الله رب العالمين تباركت يا ذا الجلال والإكرام تبارك الذي جعل في السماء بروجا وجعل فيها سراجا وقمرا منيرا تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الحمد لله حمدا يوافي نعمه ويكافئ مزيده اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ونبيك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه اللهم أكرمنا ولا تهنا وأعنا ولا تعن علينا اللهم ارحمنا فإنك بنا راحم ولا تعذبنا يا مولانا فأنت علينا قادر والطف بنا يا مولانا فيما جرت به المقادير اللهم إنا نسألك حبك اللهم إنا نسألك أن تفيض علينا من محبتك اللهم إنا نسألك أن تملأ هذه القلوب بمحبتك اللهم إنا نسألك أن تنظر إلى قلوبنا نظرة رحمة انظر إلينا يا الله، انظر إلينا يا الله، حتى لا يكون في قلوبنا أحد سواك. اللهم طهر قلوبنا من الأغيار، اللهم طهر قلوبنا من السواك، طهر قلوبنا من كل ما يبعدنا عنك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اجعل حبك أحب إلينا من الماء البارد على الظمأ الشديد يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجمعنا في الدنيا على المحبين والمحبين، اللهم اجمعنا في الدنيا مع المحبين والمحبوبين. اللهم نادنا يوم القيامة مع المحبين والمحبوبين. اللهم أدخلنا الجنة مع المحبين والمحبوبين. اللهم ارزقنا حبك الحب الكثير، اللهم ارزقنا ذكرك الذكر الكثير. اللهم اجعل قلوبنا لا تنشغل بأحد سواك. اللهم اجعلنا خالصين، اللهم اجعلنا خالصين لك، مخلصين لك، مخلصين لك. خذنا منا إليك، خذنا منا إليك. اللهم اجعلنا نعيش من أجلك، ونموت من أجلك، ونقول من أجلك، ونصوم من أجلك، ونصمت من أجلك، ونقوم من أجلك، ونقعد من أجلك يا الله. يا حبيب القلوب أنت الحبيب، أنت إلفي وأنت مني قريب. يا طبيبا بذكره يتداوى كل قلب سقيم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ونبيك ورسولك محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه، اللهم آمين. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح حي على الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه اللهم المقام المحمود الذي وعدته إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصديق باللقاء يا عين قلبي يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصديق باللقاء يا عين قلبي يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصديق باللقاء يا عين قلبي يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصديق باللقاء يا عين قلبي يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشرع لنا يوم المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصويب بالنظام يا علم يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصويب النظام يا علم يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصويب النظام يا علم هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا تصويب النظام يا علم هذا جمال المصطفى أنوارنا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بديع التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا أشرع لنا يوم الزيارة.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're fine, blessed, enjoying today's day off. However, all the day looks alike right now. I hope you are enjoying the nights of Ramadan, making lots of dua to our community so that Allah elevate that. And inshallah, everything will be okay and fine as Allah wish, inshallah. Today, based on our production team, they thought of very interesting subject that we need to talk about, which is zakat. And our guest today used to appear like before. He was my guest in one of the other sessions. Is Dr. Asif Hirani. Dr. Asif Hirani, let me introduce him again, so that for people that did not watch his episode with me previously, know who's Dr. Asif Hirani. Dr. Asif Hirani completed his master's in Islamic study, Usul al-Din, from Karachi University, and attained his PhD from the Medina International University in Tafsir and Ulum al-Quran. He's an author of several books in multiple languages, including Principles of Men and Women Interaction in Islam. Interesting. And Tafsir of Surah Yusuf from psychological perspective, which we need those days, definitely. And he's currently serving as a resident scholar in Worcester Islamic Center in Nas. And Dr. Asif, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. How are you,
How
Dr.
are you,
Umar?
Habibna? Alhamdulillah. How are you, Habibna?
Alhamdulillah.
This view is very popular right now on social media. You are like, mashallah, doing a lots of da'wah online. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. Every time I scroll down, I see like, hey, Corona news, and then Dr. Asif Hirani, Corona news, and something happened, and then this smiley face with your lovely daughter on your laps. May Allah bless you and bless her, inshallah.
I mean,
Let me start by asking you a question. How do you see the da'wah from previously inside the mosque and masajid, and now the da'wah, and now on the blue, on Facebook, on Instagram, social media? So how do you feel about that?
So Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah, amma ba'd. So first of all, I'd like to say thanks to ISPCC, entire administration, Dr. Umar, to yourself for having me. It's always a pleasure to join you guys. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this and reward all of you, because actually you are talking about me being on social media. I actually am a huge fan, and I have a huge inspiration for you guys, mashallah. You're not only doing religious programs, you are actually doing social programs and the financial aid programs, which as a community, each and every community should imitate, subhanAllah. So may Allah reward all of you, inshallah. Ameen ya Rabb. Dawah is extremely different, because back in the days when in-person dawah was happening, when you will see people in masjid, you will interact with them, you will going to give your shoulder to lean on, which was a different experience. And now, because of social distancing, masajid have suspended their activities, and now almost all the programs are being done virtually. So obviously there is a missing ingredient of meeting people and having that interaction, in-person interaction. But on the flip side, actually, the positive joy listening to the wide variety of Islamic lectures, and they can see the programs and they can donate wherever they want, wherever they feel, just by sitting in their home. So they don't have to necessarily go to one Islamic center to another Islamic center and risk their life, especially during these times of coronavirus. So this is a positive side. But on the flip side, the concern is that, inshallah, hopefully things will be better. very soon, inshallah, hopefully. But when the things will get better, how the people will come back, because eventually it won't happen like a magic wand overnight. All of a sudden things will get better. Slowly and gradually, then people will take their time in coming back to masjid. And that will be a concern for all of us, that when you're going to have that full congregation in Jummah, full congregation of Eid, especially in the masajid like ISBCC or in Worcester Islamic Center, which are very big masajid. There will be challenges, but on a positive side, at least me as an imam, my wife is extremely happy now. I don't have to go anywhere at all. I was speaking to one of the imams, and he was saying that this self-quarantine is actually the dua of all the wives of the imam.
I like that.
Yeah.
Inshallah, yeah. I think post-COVID-19 dawah and going to masajid will be like the state's different type of fiqh and different type of like a message to the community, inshallah. And we'll tackle this in our episode, inshallah. So let's start by question number one. What does the word zakat mean? And what's its significance in Islam?
So word zakat means, first of all, Arabic is very rich language. And that's why Arabs are rich. No, I'm kidding.
Oh, come on.
Okay. Arabic is extremely rich language. It's really hard for me to translate the word zakah exactly in English or in any other language. Charity is a very shallow translation. Zakah can be translated in 3 English terms, and all of that is actually meant by zakat. First is purification, because it purifies the suspicious earning. That's the meaning of zakat. Second is increase. Nama, ziyada, that's also meaning of zakat, because it increases the wealth of recipients, and actually it also increases the wealth of donors also. Third, zakat meaning is praise. وَلَا تُزَكُّوا أَنفُسَكُمْ is also zakat. So donors will be praised by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day of judgment, and sometimes donors will be praised also by the recipients. So again, these 3 meanings you will see in the logha, in the dictionary: purification, increase, and praise.
Awesome.
And also, just to some, the Quranic use of zakat is actually a sadaqat, and zakat in the Quran is used interchangeably. Just keep FYI, because most people, I see this confusion is spreading, that zakat and sadaqat both are.
This was my next question. Like, what is the difference? What is the difference between zakah, sadaqat, and zakatul mal, for instance?
Yeah, so in Quran and in Hadith, so in classical text of Quran and Hadith, sadaqat and zakah are used interchangeably. They are used as synonyms. But later on in the Muslim community, globally speaking, zakah is meant for obligatory charity, which is 2.5%, and sadaqat is actually for non-obligatory charity. So right now, when we were going to use sadaqah and zakat, we'll use in these not obligatory and obligatory charity. But generally, when Quran and Hadith uses back in the days, they were used as synonyms.
Okay, perfect. Now we understand that zakah, sadaqah, and there is zakat al-mal, the zakah, and the zakat al-fitr.
Yeah. So zakatul fitr is different. So zakatul fitr is even the rulings are different. So zakatul fitr, in the zakatul mal or the obligatory charity, you have to give once you have over the nisab, that is 85 grams gold or equal amount of cash value, which is around in today it will be around $4,600. If you have that in your account for more than 12 months, you have to give zakatul mal, obligatory charity. For zakatul fitr, is different. For zakatul fitr, you have to see if you have more than the required food you have to eat and your family have to eat. Then you have to give zakatul fitr, and your family, even the kids who have not reached to adulthood, even you have to give them on their behalf, which is around $10 if you will calculate in the cash amount.
Perfect. So I will come into nisab.
Yeah.
We need to calculate zakat, and this $10 to $12, because like some say that 12, some they say that 10, and stuff like that. So let's get back to the nisab. You mentioned that if I have in my bank account $4,500 maintained. So this is the question for our sister Habiba. Like 4,500, sometimes they go up, sometimes they go down. And then at the end of the year, I end up with 4,500. So how much I have to pay?
there's disagreement between the four imams. I don't want to torture you with what Imam Abu Hanifa says and so on, but I have to.
Tell you what Imam Asif Hirani, who read all those books.
So basically there's disagreement. I'll mention them and then I will mention what we have to do. Easy is the Hanafi opinion, but I'll mention, so Shafi and Hanbali, they say it have to be maintained for 12 years above the nisab. So if, yeah, so if you have, let's say $4,600 is the nisab today. Okay. If you have $5,000 throughout the year in your bank account for 11 months, and then something happened, now you have decreased from $5,000 to $4,000. And according to Hanbali and Shafi, you do not have to give zakat until you will have that 12 months again above the nisab. But Hanafis are easy to calculate because all of us, we don't necessarily keep checks and balances in our bank balances. So Hanafis say, let's say from 1st of Ramadan, just using this date for easy calculation, from 1st of Ramadan 2019 to 1st of Ramadan 2020, if these two dates, if you have more than your nisab, then no matter if amount decreases in between the 2 years, in between this year, it doesn't matter, you have to give zakat. So that's easy calculation. And that's why I would say just go for that because it's easy for all of us in the Western countries.
Okay. I will not leave this again. So 4,600 at the nisab. So at the end, this was like my bank account in 1st of Ramadan last year. Yeah. 1st of Ramadan this year, and then I passed through that 1,500, and then today in Ramadan I have 11,000. Okay, so what is the amount of that I have to calculate my zakat on?
Whatever you have today.
What? So 11,000 times 2.5%.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the easy opinion to calculate without going into the complications.
Perfect. So whatever I have right now, and then multiplied by 2.5, this is my amount of zakat. So I have a question for you. Now ISBC are putting zakat calculator like on their websites. Can we use this app? Can we use this app to put the stuff so that we can know exactly the amount of zakat I have to pay?
So first of all, it's a great thing, man. SubhanAllah. I should ask my masjid to do the same. SubhanAllah. I've never thought of this. MashaAllah, it's an amazing idea. First of all, may Allah reward all of you doing this IT work. SubhanAllah. We as an imams are in front, but wallahi, it's a real effort is being put by you guys. May Allah reward all of you.
It's all together, all like on the web, and everyone will share everything.
So I have not seen that personally, but I know that many of the big Islamic organizations, and including like right now ISBCC, have done this. So if your zakat calculation is simple, then that's an easy way. You should go and you should I'm assuming that you all trust your local masajid and organization, and you should cooperate in all the good things. But if your zakat calculation is some complicated, then I would say go to a scholar or the person of knowledge.
Perfect. Now I calculate the zakah. I know the nisab, and then I calculate the zakah. So first of all, I have some money that I have to give as zakah. Number one, does the masajid eligible in the United States eligible for having this zakah money? Yes or no? And number two, what are the masarif zakah that I need to pay my money in?
So when it comes to the masajid, you might be aware that there is a disagreement between the scholars. Though the vast majority of classical scholars, again, listen to the words carefully, as our many options have changed. I guess humor is not makruh, right? Okay. So the vast majority of classical scholars of the four mazahib, they say that you cannot give it to the masjid. But obviously things have changed when the Muslim community have migrated to the Muslim minorities, like in Western countries, in Europe, and then especially in US. So the fatwa was revised, and now there are two different layers. So classical scholars, they did not allow spending zakah money on the masjid or construction of the masjid or expenses of the masjid. But then when Muslim community of the contemporary scholar, they gave permission. This is the second layer now. They gave permission that actually you can use zakah money for the da'wah purposes. So that's a second layer. For any da'wah purposes, you can use zakah money. And then there is a third layer, which is a few contemporary scholars, and one famous one of them is Shaykh Yusuf al-Qardawi and Shaykh al-Jibreen. They give permission that actually you can use zakah money for the masjid also, And especially in the Western countries, when you know that masajid are doing a lot more than just 5 time prayers, they are doing dawah activities, they are the relief projects, they are the people, they are the places where delegates and politicians will come, and that's a representation of the Islam itself. Then there is no harm in using this opinion by a scholar like Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi and Sheikh al-Jibreen. But I would say that we should divide our zakah in a way that it should go to other recipients also. So it should go to poor, it should go to needy, it should go to other deserving people, as well as we can give it to the masjid.
Perfect. So there is masarif al-zakat. I have the money, I have masarif al-zakat, so I can buy them and pay. And if the masjid they have the access to the relief, to the access to the poor, can we give to the masjid or to the organization that do relief and do that access to the poor and the needy, or should I have to do it myself?
So there are two different aspects of what you're asking, Brother Amar. First is to give it to the masjid so that they can fulfill their expenses.
Oh,
Even that's permissible according to Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi and Sheikh al-Jibreen. Although majority classical scholars deny this, but I'm talking about contemporary scholars. When it comes to ISBCC or Worcester Islamic Center, they are having their own, every masjid is having their own zakat committee or zakat team for the relief projects. That's absolutely fine according to everyone to give it to them, because most of us, we don't have the access or reach to give it directly to the poor or deserving people or less fortunate people. And obviously right now in coronavirus, you don't want to go out because of self-quarantine. So these masajid and their zakat committee is going out. So it's safer and easy to take out the burden from your shoulders and give it to them.
Perfect. I have a question from our brother Kareem. He said that who's the person who is eligible for zakat? Many people still can afford food on the table, but still need support. And this is like ongoing questions at the ISBCC. Hey, yeah, you might see me like barely making, I'm not saying month to month, like 20th of the month till the end of the month. And sometimes like I come with my car, but I need help. And they go, oh, Allah, subhanAllah, they go asking for some money. Now, am I like eligible for zakah, or am I like asked to pay zakah?
Vast majority of a scholar, again, I don't want to torture you, but Maliki Shafi Hamli, that's vast majority of a scholar. They say even if a person is eligible to give zakah, yet he might be given zakah. So even if a person have more than nisab, yet he can receive zakah if there's a need, because the definition of miskeen, different than faqir. The definition of miskeen, as the scholars explain, is not the person who doesn't have money at all. The definition of miskeen is a person who have money, but his needs are overwhelmed, and that therefore he will need more money. So especially right now, if you have, let's say, $4,800 in your bank account, still we know the rent in Boston, subhanallah. so we, vast majority of the scholars give permission. Why we have problem with that is just don't be judgmental in your approach in judging your brothers and sisters at the time of need and the time of extreme necessity.
Perfect. And this is a very, I would say, a flexible, very well thought of answer. We thank you for that, because like actually we've seen people right now during those past 2 months who have never seen them before. And those are people like, wallahi, and it was khajal. They're asking for if there is a relief thing. And this is like a moment that we have to reflect on the blessings and bounties of, number one, al-istikhdam, that Allah are using us to make some relief on those our brothers and sisters. Number two, that we have money to pay some of our zakat and sadaqat as well.
Yeah.
Now, we mentioned something about the quarantine. And prior, you and I together, you said that's the fiqh. You have been like bombarded by questions about fiqh changes stuff during the past 2 months. So share with us some of those, I would say, challenges of the fiqh, quarantine, Ramadan, Qiyam, Salah, and I have my question about the Hajj as well, or the Qiyam.
So I knew it was coming. The fiqh challenges, fiqh dynamics, when this all lockdown started around March 13th or March 14th. So I actually invested my 6-7 days full, almost. I barely had sleep on those days, and I actually compiled a research paper of the new contemporary fiqh issues which will come. And I can actually share that link with you. It's published. It's on our website. It's been endorsed by so many different scholars, alhamdulillah, even locally in US. Whether Jummah should be cancelled or not, whether we should pray Jummah at home, what about fasting, what about zakah, can we expedite, can we defer zakah, so on and so forth. I knew it was coming, but subhanAllah, it's just the drop in the ocean. The fiqh will be evolved completely, and those people who have closed the door of ijtihad, obviously those people who are not qualified for ijtihad, that's a different thing, but those people who don't want to look at the new issues and want to find out the fiqh principles and rulings on that, they were going to suffer a lot. So you need to have contemporary knowledge, and you need to stay connected to the contemporary scholars to come up with the answers to the contemporary questions.
Yeah, and we're be very much happy to see those new research paper, and hope to that we'll learn something about that, and definitely we'll learn to see that how can we practice during this time and post COVID-19, inshallah. So tell me about like Taraweeh. Like Taraweeh, now we are praying Taraweeh either alone with our families, and I miss my Imam. Can I let him like do Zoom meeting and then we pray after him because we love his voice?
Okay, it's a very good question. So first of all, praying Tarawih or at Masjid, let's see that. Tarawih is not obligatory by vast majority of scholars, so that's a done deal. So when it comes to praying at which is better, now there is a disagreement. Majority of the scholars say praying at Masjid is better, or praying in congregation is better. Imam Malik rahimahullah is reported from him that he used to say, some Malikis say that pray alone at home is better than praying at Masjid, although that's not the majority. But he said that when you pray alone, it just avoids you from raya. It avoids you from showing off to people. You can have more connection with Allah. That's the reason. Okay, now. So basically, there is disagreement. Now we don't have any options. Beggars can be choosers. So you have to pray alone or with Jama'ah at your home. Second question, that can we pray Taraweeh behind a remote imam or behind a virtual imam? So just let me tell you this. So whatever I'm about to say is not just to discourage the use of modern technology and the latest methods of communication. We are actually using this StreamYard and Facebook to actually communicate this. We encourage the use of modern day technology, but there is a term called maqasid al-sharia, objectives of Islamic law. If there's anything goes against that, then we have to be very skeptical about accepting that. There are reasons why majority of these scholars from the four mazhab, they did not allow a remote imam or to follow behind a remote imam unless it's in the hudud of the masjid. If it's the hudud of the masjid, premises of the masjid, then it's fine. That if there are different rooms in the masajid, then you can follow the imam through Zoom or Skype. But let's say if you are sitting in Boston, I'm sitting in New York or New Jersey, then vast majority of scholars of the four mazahib, I'm not saying consensus, but it's almost a consensus, almost an ijma, that the scholars haven't allowed, and there are reasons for that. First reason is that the understood implication of a congregational prayer necessitates that the congregants gather in the same place and not simply at the same time. So the understanding is not actualized in a virtual congregation, which just entails a physical separation of the worshippers and result in them not having witnessed the actual congregational prayers in the mosque. Second, it just goes against some of the basic maqasid of the Sharia. So when you walk to the masjid, you'll get a reward. How you will do that? Third is that it's not permissible for the gap between the rows of salah, so the people who are praying behind the imam, how much gap should be between them. So no one allowed the distance to be 150 miles between each other with buildings and road acting as a divider. No one allows this. And in virtual congregants, you have to assume that, subhanAllah. So that will be an issue, subhanAllah. There's so many other things that it will go back to against the maqasid of the Sharia. When things will get better, then then how you will ask people to come to the masjid when people will say, okay, we can actually do the jama'ah at home. And then furthermore, let's apply this logic. Then why do you need masjid? Just have Kaaba, have that one Masjid Haram, and then close all the masajid. Yeah. Because we can follow virtually. Yeah. So basically it goes against our logic, against our rationale. And then at the same time, once you apply this, you are going to see this, that it does not feel genuine and natural with the maqasid of the Sharia. So I would say that even for the Taraweeh, it's not even obligatory prayer to pray in Jama'ah. Even some scholars say it's better to pray at home. So why there's an argument? Yes, if you like the recitation of your Imam or any other Imam in that case, just listen to that recitation while you are at your home, while you are eating. And at the same time, when it comes to prayer, you can pray this Nawafil Salah individually or with your family.
Dr. Asif, Allah, you broke my heart because like I was planning to get a yes from you so that next year Ramadan I will play Zoom live like with my Imam. Alhamdulillah. But Jazakallah khairan. I have a question from Sister Habiba. She said like Jazakallah khairan. Do you have to give a zakat on retirement funds like MFS accounts, for example, 401ks? Do you have to give the zakat for that?
Yeah, so Sister Habiba, that's a beautiful question. So there are different kinds of retirement plans. So let's say if your retirement plan is not willing, so you contracted in a job and your job have offered you that, okay, we will offer you 401k, and there's no willingness to actually start a new retirement account. In that, there's two opinions, and both of them are coming from a scholarly perspective. Do whatever you want. One is that you can calculate each and every year income will be the income and then give zakah on that. The second opinion is that you don't have to give zakah on every year, even though that's your money, but it's not your ownership right now. Once you will get that, once you will going to get that money, and then 1 year will be passed, then you have to give zakah on that. So basically, both the opinions are there. Either give every year by calculating, or wait until you are going to get that money at the end when you are going to get that money, and then eventually 1 year will pass and you will give that zakat. But this is only when you are not willing to. You don't have an option. When you have an option, like if you are a 1099 employee, and if you say, okay, let me go for these retirement plans, now you are willingly going, then most of these scholars say that you have to give every year.
Perfect. If there's anything, let's say that this, we have to pay zakat in Ramadan, is there a relation between zakat and Ramadan?
So traditionally, I know that many Muslims do this. There are two reasons for it, which I can think of. One is it's easy to calculate. No one remembers even Islamic months after Ramadan. So it's easy to remember because zakat have to be given a lunar calendar. So it's easy to remember Ramadan. And second, because in Ramadan, whatever you do, you will get multiplied rewards. So people will going to give in Ramadan, but no, there's no Sharia bounding you to give zakah in Ramadan. Actually, I would say it depends on circumstances. So if circumstances are you will see a need in the community or in your family, and you're helping them even other than Ramadan because of that need, and you answer to that call, you will get more reward than generally giving in Ramadan when there was no need. So basically, it depends on circumstances.
There is like right now there's a COVID-19 relief funds. Can we donate or put our zakat into this fund?
If they are the organization whom you trust, they will going to spend your money in a way how the zakat money should be used, then there is no harm. Then actually it's one of the requirement right now, need of the hour. But if they are the organization where you know that your money won't be used, like some I know that certain mayors have started locally in their cities to have funds. So if you can give them from the regular charity, from giving them from zakah is really questionable, because some scholars say that zakah can be given to that. Certain scholars say zakah cannot be given to that. But if that's running by a Muslim organization, let's say ISBCC have their COVID-19 relief fund, then I will going to give it blindly because I'm a Musalli at ISBCC, I trust ISBCC or any other masjid for that argument. So again, it depends on your understanding and relationship and trust on the organization.
Perfect. Also that now I'm a business owner, and now my business got impacted. I own a restaurant, and this like right now it's shut down. I have some money. However, like this money is eroding very fast. Okay. And I applied for the PPP and I got some funds so that I can pay some of the funds. Or I'm right now on unemployment. They laid me off on unemployment. And definitely I don't know the future what it would look like. So zakah would be like, if I pay zakah, yeah, I have the money to pay zakah. However, it's scary to pay zakah. Shall I pay or not pay zakah if my business got impacted, if I'm unemployment funds, stuff like that?
So before I can tell you the exact answer to the question, just remember this general principle is that zakah becomes obligatory after 1 year have passed and you have more than the nisab. So generally speaking, it becomes obligatory regardless of the circumstances. Remember this. Now, and obviously you have to trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that by giving this 2.5% from the savings, Allah will going to increase my wealth, because Rasulullah have promised in sadaqah that this charity is not reduced by giving this wealth is not reduced by giving charity. So all these things you have to remember. But yes, there are exceptions to the general principle, and those exceptions are especially in the Hanbali mazhab and some of the Hanafis mazhab, and that is if the situation is not good, just like in the times in which we are living, then you can defer zakah. Then you can defer zakah to the next year or to the next year. And they actually have the evidence on Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh. During his time, the financial situation was not good in one of the years. So Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anh said that, okay, we won't collect zakah this year. Next year, we'll collect the zakah twice. So it's okay and permissible to defer the zakah, especially in the times in which we are living, global recession. And as you said, there's a flip side also, to expedite zakah. So those people who are well off and those people who can afford, I would recommend, because there are so many people financially struggling right now, and if they can even expedite the zakah for 2 years. They can give zakah for this year and they can give zakah for next year. So basically it depends on circumstances, because Sharia is very flexible. So if you are under those circumstances where you are struggling, you can defer. Or if you are well off, you can give 2 years advance. Otherwise, you can stay in the middle and give every year.
Dr. Asif, now the time has finished. However, I have one last question. I know that it's always like the time flies with you. There is a saying that say that, hey, zakat is paid so that you don't keep your money inside the bank. Because like if you keep the money inside the bank, it will decrease year after year after year, like 2.5, and then it keep decreasing. This is like a philosophy of zakat, so that you can put your money in trading. Okay, but I'm not a trader. I don't understand trading. So my money will decrease. So I'm like, it's a paradox of thinking here. My money will decrease, or shall I, is it like, this is the rationale behind the zakat? Shall I have to pull my money and give it to a trader and either win an increments profits or lose it all?
So that's a good question. It goes back to the maqasid of the Sharia, objectives of the Islamic law. Zakat came there to better the circulation of the wealth. That's the primary purpose of the zakah. So the rich people were going to that so the circulation of the wealth becomes better, and it won't only reduce to the rich people. That's the purpose of the zakah and any financial instructions in Quran and in Sunnah. So obviously, Islam also encourages this, that whatever you have, you won't only keep it in your account and in your deposit boxes, because this is something which Islam encourages, to invest that money into the business and into trading. Obviously, no one is asking you to blindly do this. Go into your skills and field, and then eventually do this. But if you have a huge amount of money, if you just want to save something for your retirement, for the emergency, that's okay. But then Islam encourages you to invest those money in different projects and different avenues. So eventually it will increase also, because increase is one of the terms of the zakah.
It's always a pleasure to be with us. And Allah bless you, increase your knowledge, increase your ilm. And I hope to see you again, inshallah, discuss Surah Yusuf from the psychological impact. We need that. Definitely we need that. Jazakallah khairan.
I love you for the sake of Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
يشفع لنا ممسحا صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا ممسحا يا نفس طيبي للرضا يا عيونا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أكمل صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم السحاب بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا فالأمان واتقوا أنت ساعته الشرى حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الأمان والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا والسحاب يا نفس يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أكمل صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى صلوا عليه وسلموا نشفع لنا بالسلام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا واتقوا أن زواته والبشر حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الرحمن والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم السحاب يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يوم السحاب صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس يا أنا جمال المصطفى الورق لا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا الأمان واتقوا أنت ساعته بل الشرى حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الأمان والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا حتما صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا الأنام وتروا أن جزاته والبشر حالنا صلوا عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الرحمن والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس طيبي للرضا يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لاحت لنا صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا فالهنا واتقوا أنت سعاده والشقى حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الأمان والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس طيبي للرضا يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لاحت لنا صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا فالهنا واتقوا أن جزاءه والبشر حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الرحمن والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس طيبي للرضا يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أكمل صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا فالهنا واتقوا أنت سواته بل الشقى حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الأمان والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أكمل صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا فالهنا واتقوا أنت سواته والبشر حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الرحمن والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس طيبي للرضا يا عيونا أنا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أتمنى صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من المولى زاد على الأنام واتقوا أنت ساعته والشرى حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الأمان والأمان صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا والسلام يا نفس يا هذا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أتمنى صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من المولى زاد على الأنام وتروا أن زراعته والبشر حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الرحمن والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يشفع لنا صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يا نفس طيبي للرضا يا أنا جمال المصطفى أنوار لا أكمل صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا اشفع لنا يوم الزحام بشرى لنا من الهدى زاد عنا فالأمان واتروا أنت سعاده والشكر حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الأمان والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا والزحام يا نفس يا جمال المصطفى أنواره لا أكمل صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا بالسلام بشرى لنا من الهدى دل على وتروا أن جزاته والبشر حالنا صل عليه دائما في كل حين ربنا وآله وصحبه الرحمن والوفاء صلوا على خير الأنام المصطفى بدر التمام صلوا عليه وسلموا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يشفع لنا يوم الزحام
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون والذي خلقكم من طين ثم قضى أجلا وأجل مسمى عنده ثم أنتم تمترون وهو الله في السماوات وفي الأرض يعلم سركم وجهركم ويعلم ما تكسبون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين فقد كذبوا بالحق لما جاءهم فسوف يأتيهم أنباء ما كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا من قبلهم من قرن مكناهم في الأرض ما لم نمكن لكم وأرسلنا السماء عليهم مدرارا وجعلنا الأنهار تجري من تحتهم فأهلكناهم بذنوبهم وأنشأنا من بعدهم قرنا آخرين ولو نزلنا عليك كتابا في قرطاس فلمسوه بأيديهم لقال الذين كفروا إن هذا إلا سحر مبين وقالوا لولا أنزل عليه ملك ولو أنزلنا ملكا لقضي الأمر ثم لا ينظرون ولو جعلناه ملكا لجعلناه رجلا وللبسنا عليهم ما يلبسون ولقد استهزئ برسل من قبلك فحاق بالذين سخروا منهم ما كانوا به يستهزئون قل سيروا في الأرض ثم انظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين قل لمن ما في السماوات والأرض قل لله كتب على نفسه الرحمة ليجمعنكم إلى يوم القيامة لا ريب فيه الذين خسروا أنفسهم فهم لا يؤمنون ولو ما سكن في الليل والنهار وهو السميع العليم قل أغير الله أتخذ وليا فاطر السماوات والأرض وهو يطعم ولا يطعم قل إني أمرت أن أكون أول من أسلم ولا تكونن من المشركين قل إني أخاف من يصرف عنه يومئذ فقد رحمه وذلك الفوز المبين وإن يمسسك الله بضر فلا كاشف له إلا هو وإن يمسسك بخير فهو على كل شيء قدير وهو القاهر فوق عباده وهو الحكيم الخبير قل أي شيء أكبر شهادة قل الله شهيد بيني وبينكم وأوحي إلي هذا القرآن لأنذركم به ومن بلغ أئنكم لتشهدون أن مع الله آلهة أخرى قل لا أشهد قل إنما هو إله واحد وإنني بريء مما تشركون الذين آتيناهم الكتاب يعرفونه كما يعرفون أبناءهم الذين خسروا أنفسهم فهم لا يؤمنون ومن أظلم ممن افترى على الله كذبا أو كذب بآياته إنه لا يفلح الظالمون
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رضي الله تعالى عنهم وعن كافة المؤمنين. Dear brothers and sisters, dear believers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Tonight we'll journey through the 10th part of the Quran, Juz 10. This part finishes up the last portion of chapter 8 of the Quran, Surah Al-Anfal, beginning with verse 41. It goes all the way to the end of the chapter, around 75, verse 75 or so. And it takes us through 2/3, the overwhelming majority, of chapter 9 of the Quran, the chapter entitled Repentance, the chapter entitled Tawbah, and the only chapter in the Quran that is not accompanied with the Bismillah. It's the only chapter, chapter 9, and is the only chapter in the Quran that you do not recite Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim before it. That's because the nature and the feel of the chapter, the tone of the chapter is such that it was, revealed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with sternness as a warning to those who turn their back on the divine message, as a warning to those who are hypocritical about their faith, as a warning to those who break their covenant with Allah. So we have 414 chapters in the Quran. 113 of those chapters has Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim that you're supposed to say before you recite it, except for this juz, chapter 9 of the Quran. So a few things are worth highlighting as we review this chapter or this part of the Quran, part 10, juz 10. The needs to be mentioned regarding chapter 8, which is the chapter titled Anfal, the spoils of war, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala closes this chapter reminding us of the fact that what happened, the household of Pharaoh in the story of Moses alayhi salam, what happened in their case needs to be in the forefront of our minds, because it has happened to communities before, and it will happen to communities in the future that choose to walk the walk, that choose the path of the household of Pharaoh, that choose to reject Allah Ta'ala's signs, to ignore Allah Ta'ala's messages, and to exalt themselves as authority over Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's creatures and His creation. And the other thing that is pointed out in this part, but chapter 8 of the Quran, is about victory. The nature of our path as human beings is struggle, but that victory through that struggle comes only through Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. It's not based solely on the numbers that you have. It's not based solely on the type of strategy that you have. Faith in Allah Ta'ala and the workings of Allah Ta'ala, they are the defining factor in this regard. So this is what comes out of chapter 8. It's its closing. Chapter 9 of the Quran, Surah Tawbah, the chapter on repentance, is where the bulk of part 10 occurs. And this is where we want to spend a little time discussing. The first is that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in this chapter addresses two major constituents, two major groups of people that He wants us to focus on and to understand their nature and to understand how these two constituents, these two groups, are the two main kinds of groups that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala does not want us to be like, that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala deems failures, that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala deems far from Him. And so He spends time in the Quran, in this chapter of the Quran, in this juz of the Quran, talking about these two constituents. The first are the polytheists, specifically the Arab polytheists in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, that were affiliated with the Quraysh and the surrounding tribes, those that associated partners with Allah Ta'ala. This is the first group. And the second group are the munafiqun, the hypocrites. So the first group are a group of folks who did not believe in the message of the Prophet ﷺ, did not believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, associated partners with Allah ta'ala, and went to war with the Prophet ﷺ. They had treaties, they had covenants with the Prophet ﷺ, and they broke their covenants and their treaties multiple occasions. Right? So this caused Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be angry, and this caused Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to declare war against this classification of people. And that's why this chapter of the Quran is revealed without the Bismillah, because the polytheists at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Arab polytheists of the Quraysh and some other tribes, they angered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by breaking their covenant with the Prophet ﷺ, in the same way that some of the followers of Musa ﷺ had broken their covenant when they decided to prostrate and worship the golden calf, etc. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared war on these groups of people. Remember, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only declares war on one other groups of persons, and that's the persons who deal in riba, in usury. Well, here in chapter 9, Allah ta'ala declares war on the polytheists of Mecca. And the other case are the people who are hypocrites, those who were with the Prophet ﷺ, who said they believed in the message, who said that they were part of the believing community, but they weren't committed. They were shady Muslims. They spoke, they did all the talk with their mouth, but when it came down to sacrificing, when it came down to really a commitment, a strong commitment, they weren't there. And they asked the Prophet ﷺ on numerous occasions to not go out to battle with him, to not get involved with projects with him, etc. and so forth. And these were hypocrites. So chapter 9 of the Quran, Surah Tawbah, which is the bulk of the 10th part of the Quran, gives us two strong case studies, stern case studies about the kinds of people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala essentially, not only deems fuel for the hellfire, but He goes to war with them and says it doesn't matter how much they have in this world, they'll have nothing of the afterlife. So we want to pay strong attention. In chapter 9, let's start with verse 18. This is the first takeaway. And this is addressing the hypocrites, those people who used their, not only the hypocrites, but also the polytheists as well. More importantly, the Arab polytheists at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. That's who it's first addressed to, verse 18. And this is the verse where Allah Ta'ala talks about what are the kinds of people that are truly the kinds of folks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala welcomes and embraces in his household, right? This is really, really important, brothers and sisters, in the times that we're in now, where, all of the masajid of Allah ta'ala are essentially isolated, particularly starting with the Haram in Mecca, Masjid Nabawi, the Prophet's Mosque in Medina, and then by extension, all of the houses of Allah ta'ala around the world. The main claim that the polytheists put forward to the Prophet ﷺ is that, we have a right to be in the Haram. We have a right to be in the house of Allah Ta'ala. Why? Because we give water to the pilgrims, and we shelter and give clothes to the pilgrims, right? We help and we support. We're the people on the ground that are facilitating for folks to have pilgrimage. And if you remove us, then your wealth will go away. People won't come away, and there won't be anyone to support the masajid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala canceled that idea and reformed this idea. And he told the Prophet ﷺ to not let any polytheists in the haram, purify the haram. He said, "Innamal mushrikuna najis." From now on, consider all polytheistic activity to be impure. And the haram in Mecca is a place for pure people of pure faith. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about what it was exactly that it takes to construct and build a masjid. إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ الْمَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ. So what it really takes to construct and build the mosques, the houses of worship of Allah, Allah Ta'ala says, he tells us, are those that man amana billah, those who believe in Allah Ta'ala, wal yawm al-akhir, and those that believe in the day of judgment, wa aqama as-salah, and those that actually perform the prayer, wa ata az-zakat, and those that actually give from their wealth, they're not stingy, wala yakhsha illa Allah, and they only fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then those are the people who are guided, who are the muhtadun, Allah Ta'ala says. So it's not about like the fact that just because you help, just because you may volunteer, that does not render you qualified to serve and to help build in the house of Allah Ta'ala. Constructing and building and supporting the houses of Allah Ta'ala has two aspects to it. There's the physical aspect, the work that has to be done, but then there's the spiritual aspect of the person as well. And that's the fact that the person has to be a real committed believer. Allah Ta'ala did not accept people in his house in Mecca that could put forth physical activity, but they did not want to contribute spiritually to the cause. So this is the first point, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expelled all of those people who were not real, true, authentic contributors in the spiritual sense, in the faith sense, to the cause of Islam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that if they have any other idea about God, associates to God, that's unclean, get them out of the haram. Another activity the polytheists in Mecca used to do in the time was they used to go around the Kaaba with no clothes on. They used to go around the Kaaba with no clothes on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala banned them and told them absolutely to go out. And the Prophet ﷺ removed them, had them removed from the area, and it didn't matter how involved they were in volunteering with the pilgrims and volunteering with the travelers and helping the travelers have access to water and lodging, etc. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't need just regular workers. He needs, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want, Allah doesn't need anyone. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want regular workers. Right? Allah, if that's the case, he'll send malaika. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants true believers to do the work. It's not just about the work being done. Otherwise, any old imbecile can do, right? Otherwise, shaitan can do it. Allah wants true believers in his house, true believers constructing his house, true believers supporting his house, real true believers committed to the cause. All right, so this is the first criteria that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points out to us. The second is the timing, that in this juz, in this 10th part of the Quran, Allah identifies that there are 12 months in the lunar year, and from those 12 months, 4 of them are sacred months. 4 of the 12 months, specifically 4, not any 4, 4 of them are holy and sacred months in which certain things are inviolable. There's to be, no bloodshed, no war, no battles during those months. And those 4 months are the 3 months during the Hajj time: Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah, and Muharram, which is the first month of the year, and then the month of Rajab, which is the 6th month in the year. And so, therefore, these sacred moments throughout the year are to be honored, and are to be honored every single year. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala points that out. Now, twice Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala invokes here, in this chapter 9 of the Quran, the characteristics of munafiqun, of hypocrites, the characteristics of people that, are say verbally they're committed to the faith, but in reality they are not people of spiritual maturity, and they're not committed believers. One of the characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions is that they instruct others to do what's wrong, and they forbid others to do what's good. So this is the opposite trait of the believers. Remember, we talked so much in the past couple days about the quality of ummah with justice, about standing up for what's right and protesting what's wrong. Well, folks that are not committed do the opposite. Folks that are hypocritical, the munafiqun, do the opposite. They promote what you're not supposed to do, and they speak out against, or they find excuses to go around what you should do, right? They try to find creative ways around going around obligations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further mentions that their characteristic includes stinginess, tight-fistedness. And when it comes time to commit, when it comes time to give, when it comes time to support, you won't find them around. Either they won't, they'll have excuses, or they won't even be present, and they won't be a part of the contributions. The other thing is that when it's time to rise for the salah, for the prayer, they rise for the salat sluggishly. They rise for the salah lazily. They stand up with kusala, right? They're not energetic to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then when it comes to any struggle or sacrifice for the cause of Islam, for the cause of the deen of Allah ta'ala, you don't find them committed. They fall behind. They're full of excuses, right? So these are the characteristics, that they instruct others to do what's wrong, and they forbid or find excuses to do what's right. They're stingy and tight-fisted. They're lazy to pray. They fall behind on their commitments and their sacrifices. When everyone else is sacrificing and supporting the cause, you won't find them available. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala demonstrated and told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in more than one way, essentially in a nutshell, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fed up with these kinds of people. I'm using human language. That's not what the ayah says. But essentially, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and understand this, get this, and you can read this in the juz. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stopped the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam from praying the funeral prayer over those believers, and for even standing at their graves, right? Even to witnessing their burial. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped doing that. And this was a type of demonstration that that they have been dishonored by the community, and that the community has not welcomed them. And certainly in the afterlife, they are they're not in a good place. So Allah goes through significant detail and length in the surah in chapter 9 about the polytheists, right? That they should not be a part of the house of Allah at all, and about the hypocrites, that they at the time of that in their lifetime, they're not really committed members to the community. So when they are passed on, Allah asked the Prophet ﷺ not to make them a part of the community, not to embrace them as a community member by not praying over them and not standing over their grave, not visiting their graves, for example. So this is a very stern thing, that these are two case studies, two kinds of scenarios that we don't want to be in. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spends time in this juz, in this part, in this chapter of the Quran, to talk about this. Then he also talks about past precedents near the end of the chapter. Allah talks about past precedents, past communities that were better off in terms of finance than the hypocrites and the polytheists. They were better off in terms of wealth. They were better off in terms of having larger families to have protection and support and connection. they were better off in all aspects than the polytheist, idolatrous Meccans and then the hypocritical Muslims. Previous communities in the past, Allah mentions the communities, some of the people of Prophet Nuh alayhi salam. He mentions some of the people of the Ad and the Thamud, the people of Hud and the people of Salih. May Allah be pleased with them both. He mentions the people of Shu'aib, the people of Madian, for example, people of Shu'aib, the people of Mu'tafikat, which are the people of Lut alayhi salam, the people of Ibrahim alayhi salam. Allah mentions that there are so many communities that were better off and did the same thing and ended up in the same scenario, the same worst case failed scenario. So, do this if you want to. Be like that if you want to. Live that lifestyle if you dare. But understand that your end will be just like those who were before you, and they had more wealth than you, more power than you, more money than you, more prestige than you, more of the world than you, but they failed just like you, and you will fail just like them if you keep on with this attitude of being what I call a shady Muslim, right? Someone who's verbally committed, but the practice is not there. And so that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us about. Now, because the practice of the Muslim, because the commitment of the Muslim, because the sacrifices and the giving is so important, Allah Ta'ala, for the first time in the Quran from our reading so far, gives us and the only time, actually, the first time and the only time, Allah Ta'ala gives us a detailed survey and description of the 8 categories of people that are recipients for our obligatory contributions, our obligatory financial contributions, our zakat. And the first category, the first 2 are similar. The first is the poor, the second is the needy. The poor is defined as somebody who has absolutely zero. They have nothing. So folks in that category are zakat recipients. Second are those that are needy. These are people that need, let's say, for example, $10 to live, but they only have 8, right? Also, those that are constantly short of money, right? They don't have they live under their means, right? They have money, they're working or they have some income, but it's under their means. And that they're also zakat recipient. That's a lot of people for today in our country, for example, with people that are unemployed, even if they're receiving government, the stimulus check or unemployment benefits, there's still a lot of people, even small business owners that are zakat eligible, and especially families. So this is the second thing. The third thing are zakat workers, right? So zakat workers may take those that are doing the work of finding needy families, needy communities, needy folks. Those workers can receive a salary. There's some difference of opinion in Islamic law as to whether they're paid a flat salary, for example, 2% or 8% from the zakat, or 10% from the zakat, whether it's just a flat percentage, or whether they're paid by commission. So the more people that they find that are deserving and worthy, that are not worthy, that are deserving, that fulfill the criteria of being a zakat recipient, the more people they find, the more that they earn. The less people they find, the less they earn, right? If it's commission-based, almost like sales. So they can earn an income from the overall pool of zakat based upon their being a social worker, a zakat worker, to facilitate the equitable, just distribution of zakat. The fourth are those whose hearts are to be reconciled, mu'allafatul qulubihim, those hearts that are to be softened. And those are folks that are, for example, new Muslims, new converts to Islam, for example, folks that are considering becoming Muslim. They have need, and so it's beneficial for the Muslim communities to show its embrace and support of such folks, for example. For the freeing of slaves is the fifth category. Anyone who's in a condition of being, in bondage, that zakat money can go to free them, to emancipate those persons, which also includes folks that are stuck in the form of like domestic work and domestic servitude, folks that are trafficked, for example. There are institutions that work on, freeing, trafficked young girls and women, for example. So this is one category as well. Those that are in debt, right? The gharib, those that are in debt. So anyone that has a debt, particularly someone who's gotten into debt to solve a problem or gotten into debt to help another person out, for example, not just sort of an average credit card debt, but someone who's really gotten themselves into a bind to try to help their family or help their community or help another person. That can be someone who is a valid zakat recipient. Travelers, anyone who's in limbo, who's traveling through, that they're valid zakat recipients, even if they normally have wealth, but because they are, stranded, for example, they're in between cities, for example, they may have needs. And also included on the travelers are immigrants, for example, and refugees, for example. They're absolutely 100% zakat recipients under the rubric of the traveler. So causes that help immigrants and migrants, those are zakat eligible causes. And then soldiers for, the military. We do not have a Muslim military right now. So this category, in my view, is not a relevant category that's practicable today. And you may not send your zakat money to any other military at this point either. So this category is not existent at the time, right? But in terms of other your zakat money may be used, for example, for individuals who are poor, who are needy, which also includes students. It includes paying, helping families with bills and things of that nature, right? So these are the ways. These are the 8 categories that the Quran mentions in this chapter 9 of the Quran, Juz 10, that dictate what are the obligatory sources of spending as it relates to zakat. Outside of those categories, sadaqah, general charity, is to be invoked in terms of giving. Those are charitable givings. Charitable endowments like awqaf should be instituted to fund projects and communities, especially institutions. Right. And now more than ever, brothers and sisters, institutions and individuals need your wealth. Right. So you should be thinking about it this time where zakat is due, in the month where zakat is due. And there are 2 kinds of zakat. One is the zakat that's due at the end of Ramadan, which is called zakat al-fitr, which is based on how many mouths you have to feed, how many people you're responsible for in your household. And the other is zakat al-mal, the zakat that's based on your wealth. And there are several zakat calculators that are out there. I know Zaytuna College just came out with one yesterday, which is very good. Takes into account assets and 401ks and all of these things, and debt. So there's several kinds of zakat calculators out there. You should be thinking not only in terms of families and individuals, but you should also be thinking about institutions, for example, right? I mean, local mosques, your local masajid need to be supported. Local schools need to be supported. Organizations, relief organizations need to be supported. The salaries of the staff for, schools and masajid and relief organizations, all these need to be supported, right? So, this is the time we have to really think about supporting Muslim institutions, because if we don't do that, nobody else is going to do that. So a portion of our wealth, needs to go to charitable giving to support, Muslim causes, and more importantly, in this country. There's a lot of charitable things going on abroad, and of course we should help Muslims abroad too, but we need to also help us here locally as well. So thinking about equitably distributing our wealth locally and abroad is very important. And that is part and parcel of what it means to be a committed believer, that you are invested in the well-being of, constructing the masajid of Allah Ta'ala. Innama ya'muru masajid Allah. Those who are spiritually committed to building and constructing and maintaining the houses of worship of Allah Ta'ala. They are folks who, believe in Allah, believe in the last day, establish the prayer, pay the zakat as well, and they fear Allah Ta'ala, right? Those are the criteria of true believers. Those are the criteria of folks that are committed to masajid. So, in this juz here, in this part 10 here, we should all be reminded of the importance of the masajid. Perhaps Allah, this plague has separated us from the masajid of Allah Ta'ala because we haven't, refined, we haven't built the moral commitment to support the houses of Allah Ta'ala, and the commitment to support the institutions of Islam that are here locally in our communities to establish this. Perhaps we've been very hypocritical in that regard. So perhaps we need to rethink our commitment to the houses of Allah. Perhaps we need to rethink our commitment to the institutions that are here. We need to recommit ourselves and rethink about community and what we want to build and leave here as a community. So that the houses of Allah Ta'ala, the institutions of Islam in this country, are not left to folks who are not committed to this deen, and folks who worship have other priorities when it comes to worship, other idols and other commitments as well. So this is what this juz reminds us of, brothers and sisters. This is what we have to think about. And if we don't have certain commitments like this from our end, it has to start with us. If we don't, start with ourselves and examine our own commitment, then at what point are we eligible for any of the other continued benefits of Allah Ta'ala? Remember, Allah has benefited previous communities, but those blessings, they didn't take the lesson from those blessings, and so they fail. And so it's not just about receiving, it's also about what we can give, what we can contribute to, and to make sure that our contributions are meaningful, they come from the heart, they involve sacrifice, they involve giving, and they involve true faith as well. May Allah bless us with true faith, true commitment, help us to give to those in need, to the houses of Allah, to the causes of Allah, to the people of Allah, so that we can be closer to Allah. May Allah Ta'ala invite us all back to His houses, reopen the masajids, reopen all over the world, and allow us to be a community again. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to embrace those amongst us that are less fortunate. May Allah bless you all on this evening. Please join us tomorrow night as we continue our journey in the Quran and we discover what is in store for us with the Juz 11, the 11th part of the Quran. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Have a blessed evening. Good night.